Janet had been in the city for almost 2 weeks, yet each day felt more confusing than the last. Mary had promised to introduce her to work, but Janet still didn't understand what this work was. She noticed Mary going out every night dressed in fancy clothes and coming back with wads of cash, but when Janet asked for details, Mary always brushed her off, saying, "You'll understand soon. Just be patient." One evening, Mary finally announced, "Tonight you're going to meet an important man." He's called Chief. Janet felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She imagined Chief as some wealthy man with connections, someone who might offer her a real job, something she could be proud of. She dressed up in the fancy outfit Mary gave her, but she felt awkward and out of place. The dress was tight, the heels too high, and her makeup felt heavy. Still, Mary assured her, "You look beautiful, Janet. Just trust me." When they arrived at the hotel, Janet was blown away. She had never seen anything so luxurious. The floor sparkled, the chandeliers were huge, and everyone looked important. Mary led her through the lobby, whispering, "Remember to be polite and smile. Chief likes girls who are respectful." Finally, they reached a private room where Chief was waiting. He was a middle-aged man wearing expensive clothes and a large gold chain. When he saw Janet, his face lit up, and he greeted her with a wide smile. Janet tried to hide her discomfort, reminding herself of her family back in the village. This was supposed to be her chance to help them. They sat down and Chief ordered drinks. He spoke kindly at first, asking Janet about her life in the village, making small talk to put her at ease. But as the night went on, his tone changed. He began to compliment her appearance, leaning in closer, touching her hand in a way that made her uncomfortable. Janet felt trapped, glancing at Mary, but her friend was deep in conversation with another man, paying no attention. Then Chief leaned in and whispered, "I'll take good care of you, my dear. Just relax and enjoy yourself." He reached out to pull her closer, his hand moving up her arm. Janet froze, feeling panic rising, her heart pounding as she realized what this meeting was really about. She wanted to pull away, but the fear of disappointing Mary and the pressure to support her family kept her rooted in place. Gathering her courage, Janet shook her head and gently pulled away. "I'm sorry, Chief. I'm not comfortable," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Chief's expression changed immediately. He frowned, his voice turning cold. "Are you playing games with me, girl? Do you know who I am?" He glared at her, making her feel small and helpless. Janet glanced at Mary, hoping for some support, but Mary only looked annoyed. She quickly pulled Janet aside, her face filled with anger. "Janet, what are you doing?" she hissed. "Do you realize how lucky you are to even be here? Chief is a big man, and you're embarrassing me." But Mary Janet stammered, tears filling her eyes. "I didn't know this is what you meant by work. This isn't what I expected." Mary sighed in frustration, rolling her eyes. "Janet, you need to grow up. Life in the city isn't easy. We don't have time for your village innocence here. If you want to survive, if you want to help your family, you need to do things differently." Janet felt a wave of shame and confusion wash over her. She didn't know how to respond. She had come to the city with dreams of a better life, a chance to support her family, But this wasn't the way she'd imagined it. She had always thought she would find honest work, something she could be proud of. Realizing Janet was struggling, Mary softened her tone a little. Look, I get it. It's hard at first, but trust me, once you get used to it, you'll see it's worth it. Just give it a try. Janet looked down, the guilt and pressure weighing heavily on her. She thought about her mother's face, the sacrifices her family had made to send her to the city. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, "Don't come back empty-handed." But she couldn't bring herself to do it, not tonight. Not like this. "I'm sorry, Mary," she whispered, fighting back tears. "I can't." Without another word, Janet turned and left the hotel, ignoring Chief's angry calls behind her. She walked back to the apartment alone, her heart pounding, her mind racing with doubt and fear. She didn't know what would happen next or how she would survive in the city on her own. But one thing was clear: she couldn't go down this path, no matter how desperate she was. When she finally reached the apartment, she collapsed onto the bed, feeling defeated and lost. The city lights outside her window felt cold and distant, a reminder of the harsh world she was now a part of. Janet sat alone in Mary's apartment, feeling a mixture of fear and frustration. She had no one to turn to except Mary, but after what had happened with Chief, she didn't know if she could trust her. Mary had been so angry with her, calling her ungrateful and saying she had embarrassed her in front of an important client. She told her clearly to either join in her hustle or leave her house, as she would not be catering for a grown woman who would not help herself. Janet was overwhelmed by it all, but she couldn't ignore the harsh truth. She was far from home with no money and no way to support herself or her family. Later that evening, Janet called her mother, her voice shaky as she tried to explain her feelings. She told her mother that life in the city wasn't what she expected, and that the job Mary wanted her to do wasn't right for her. She hinted that it was something that went against her values, something she couldn't bring herself to do. But her mother's response was far from what she hoped for. Instead of comforting her, Janet's mother sounded irritated. "Janet, if Mary can do it, why can't you? Is what she is doing illegal? Does Mary have two heads?" she asked, her tone stern and disappointed. "You are our only hope, Janet. Do you want your siblings to suffer? Do you want me to keep struggling alone?" Janet felt her heart sink. Her mother's words hit her hard, filling her with guilt and shame. She wanted to argue, to explain the nature of the job Mary expected her to do, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. Her mother continued, "Janet, if you ever come back to this village empty-handed, you'll be letting us all down. I might as well die of shame if you can't do what's needed to take care of us." Those words echoed in Janet's mind long after the call ended. She sat in silence, tears streaming down her face, feeling as though her whole world had collapsed. She thought of her siblings, of the sacrifices they had all made just to get by. She wanted to make life better for them, to lift her family out of poverty. But this wasn't how she'd imagined it would be. Still, with her mother's words haunting her, she felt trapped, as if there were no other choice. A few days passed, and the tension between Janet and Mary grew. Mary continued to remind her that she couldn't stay in the apartment for free forever. You need to decide, Janet, she said, her tone sharp. I'm not going to be paying rent and feeding you if you're not willing to do the work. Either you join me or you go back to the village. Janet tried to stay strong, clinging to her values. But life in the city was far more challenging than she'd expected. Mary's once friendly demeanor turned cold, and the air between them grew tense. Mary barely spoke to her, giving her looks filled with frustration and disappointment. With nowhere else to go, Janet felt increasingly isolated and unsure of what to do next. Janet kept living in Mary's apartment, but each day felt more uncomfortable. She felt like a burden, constantly reminded of the promises she had made to her family. The calls from her mother became more frequent, each one filled with guilt-inducing reminders of how her family needed her. Each time her mother asked for money, Janet's heart sank, unable to admit that she was still without work and money. One day, Janet tried to talk to Mary again. Mary, please, I need help finding a job. I know things are tense between us, but I just need something to support myself. Mary scoffed, barely looking up from her phone. Janet, jobs don't fall from the sky here. I already tried to help you, and you turned it down. What else do you expect me to do? Janet felt the sting of those words. She knew Mary was right in some ways, but the idea of giving up her values and body still filled her with dread. Days passed, and her options ran thin. Her mother's voice over the phone sounded more disappointed each time they spoke, and Janet began to feel like she was failing everyone, her family, her friend, even herself. Finally, after another call from her mother, Janet broke down. Her mother's voice was laced with frustration. Janet, you think life is easy for us here in the village? Your brothers need school fees, and the farm isn't bringing enough money. What is taking you so long? If Mary can make it, why can't you? Janet's eyes filled with tears as she listened to her mother's harsh words. She had never felt so trapped in her life. After the call ended, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring into space, her heart weighed down by guilt and pressure. She knew her family needed her, but how could she become something she wasn't? Thank you so much for watching this intense and gripping story on African Tales Stories. Your support means everything to us. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments section. Hey, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comment section below. Don't forget to share these stories so that more people can watch and learn. Until next time, stay tuned for more captivating African Tale Stories. Bye, guys.